Rudy's had a great season for us so far. He's done a lot of things that you see and a lot of things that you don't see. Tonight, a lot of things he did, were real out there and obvious for everyone to see.
And then D'Angelo, the shot making in the fourth that's just what you needed from him on a tough shooting night.
Absolutely. He ends up shooting 9 for 18, 4 for 9 from 3-point line. Those are really good percentages. Got to the line 6 times. And it was much needed. We needed that from him. It was good to see him have great confidence in his shot and let it fly.
Rudy, and D'Lo.
Your guy D'Lo, huh? You hater.
D'Lo's been much, much better. He's shooting, I think his last 12 games, he's shooting 50% from the floor. His first 13 games, I saw my guy Kyle Teige from Flagrant House tweeted this last night. The Wolves were like 5-8 to start the season, and D'Lo was shooting 35% with like 13 points a game, just a train wreck start. Mm-hmm. And now he's averaging in the next section of games like 19 points on 50% from the field. And last night, to his credit, he took over in the fourth quarter, made a bunch of 3-pointers. Old Mackey got to write that down point for Rudy Gobert, grabbing 20 rebounds.
Yeah, that was a heck of a box score
against the Pacers. So I guess my question to you guys is, it is Reckless Speculation Thursday, and so I want to ask more of a forward-looking question here. I don't have the Karl Anthony Towns trade fodder for you yet because I'm going to take another week and see if there's some trade possibilities for the summer. So we're going to wait a week on that.
All right.
But in 2 of the 3 games since he's been gone, in one of them, they got absolutely drubbed in part by Oklahoma City. They gave up like 137 points, in part because Rudy Gobert got tossed after like 9 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I almost kind of throw that game away. But in the 2 games where Cat's been out, Rudy has played, and Ant has been sort of the de facto driver of this thing. Mm-hmm. It looks pretty good. They beat Memphis, I don't have to say decisively, but that was a good win against Memphis. Last night they did give up 44 points in the second quarter and blew a 23-point lead, but then they come all the way back and that's a good Pacers team. Do these games make you feel better about the future of the Timberwolves than maybe a week ago, I guess is my question.
No, because they are far too up and down still, and Cat is going to come back at some point here, and I guess my question is, how do you make that work? Like Gobert,
it'll be at least a month though, so you will get to tinker with this, and that's the good news.
Well, I need to see flat out what I need to see from this team is any semblance of consistency, because I feel like every time that we've started to have this discussion, what we get is a terrible performance, or we get 2 guys that don't show up. I mean, they have now gotten, if I'm not mistaken, back to 500 3 or 4 times. And every time that they do, because the one was, I think they actually surpassed it with a 4 or 5 game win streak a few weeks back. So we think, okay, this thing's back on track. And then they have a putrid performance or 2. They melt down. They're not mature. See, I've been debating how much to blame Finch because, I think Chris Finch is a really good coach. Like, I think he's an X's and O's master. But the reality is you just at times, and it's what's so frustrating about this, you have so many petulant players, right? They're getting teed up. They're whining. They're not happy about this. Ant, I love Ant, but the whole thing of, well, now I'm going to lead. Come on, dude. I mean, let's stop with that. Okay. Lead by playing great.
But he's 21. He's 21.
Right. But
he's being asked, are you ready to lead? And he's saying, yeah, I guess I am ready to lead.
But the start of that is just to every night show up and play your absolute best. You're not going to be great on a nightly basis. It's too long of season. I understand that. But the point is, I am not sold on anything until I see the overall demeanor of this team start to be consistent. And then that, I think, leads to consistent games. And then the last point is, when Cat comes back now, the unknown question is, how do you make this work as well as possible? Because I think the vision was going to take longer and was a bit more difficult to get your head around than Chris Finch and Tim Conley originally thought.
I think we need to define. It's very vague to sit here and talk about who's the leader, what's the pecking order. I think we need to almost define it more clearly. So I'll start with my own thoughts on this idea that Anthony Edwards can be the leader of this team. And side note, D'Angelo Russell was asked about this last night, and this is from the Star Tribune. D'Lo said, quote, Ant is learning how to be a pro on and off the floor. You can see the development, him focusing on his craft and consistency with his routine. He came through and he led, and we followed. So this is a veteran player of 8 years in the league. He's one of your highest paid players.
Right.
Technically, D'Lo is here to be, like, they brought him in to be one of the two leaders 4 years ago. And he is even saying, hey, we're ready to follow Anthony Edwards, even though he's only 21 years old. I don't expect a 21-year-old to be Kevin Garnett at age 29 in 2003 caliber leadership here. But when I think about, okay, what does an Anthony Edwards-led team look and feel like? I think his personality sort of being the fingerprint personality of the team and players following the joy that he plays with, I think having that influence is one. I think it can be even as simple as him just leading the possessions and D'Lo playing off the ball sometimes when they're on the court together, which was the case. Yes. It felt like a little bit more often last night. And him just being the driving force that draws defenders in, boom, now it's spin cycle time. And then the third piece to it would be him being a vocal leader, holding teammates accountable, knowing what guys are supposed to be doing on defense, not taking defensive possessions off. There's been some times this season on offense where Anthony Edwards is in the corner and maybe not involved in the action. He's just standing there, clearly not going to get the ball, like body language thing. So I'd say body language. I would say the joy that he plays with, rubbing off on the team. I would say vocally holding teammates accountable, and then just being a driving force as the dictator of the offense. And if you can get those four boxes largely checked on a nightly basis over the next month while Cat is out, this just organically becomes Anthony Edwards' team, so to speak. And I think the Timberwolves are going to be a lot better off if Cat can be a complementary player, a second, a third guy in that pecking order, like Kevin Love became with a different franchise, like Andrew Wiggins became with a different franchise. Does he have to go to a different franchise to make that slotting work? Maybe someday, but it would be nice to make it work now, because there's a lot of people saying, just get rid of him. Just get rid of him, right? He's a toxic personality. He complains too much about, everything. He's a basketball victim. And I say, if there's a way to make it work with him, slotting in as a 2 or a 3, that's the perfect scenario. But that process has to start in the next 30 days.
Well, and I think that it can start, and I think that there is a chance in the next month or so that Ant can emerge. I mean, first of all, I don't need you to talk about what you're going to do. Just you being the best player for your team on the floor provides you with a certain amount of respect, and guys follow that. All right. But here's the issue with Cat, and I don't think you're going to get around this. I don't think that you can sit Cat down. He's now, 26, 27 years old? Cat is?
He's 27, I think.
Okay, yes. He's 27. He's in the midst of a max contract. I don't think you can sit him down and say, hey, Carl, you've been out for 30 days. And in that time, this has become Ant's team, and we see Ant as our guy. I don't think Cat's going to accept that. And I'll go back to when Cat criticized Ant. Like, that's his attempt. He criticized his eating habits as an attempt to be like, I'm helping to mold him. Okay, I don't buy that for 1 second. Now, do I buy that certain teammates could help mold a guy like Ant? Absolutely. But I think that Cat is going to bristle if you say, we've sort of gone to Ant as our guy. And that's the problem here. I don't think Cat has the personality to stand down.
I think I disagree. Because let me ask you this question.
A lot of pride there.
Okay, but what's the future of his career if we're going to continue this facade that he's going to be the best player and the leader of a team that aspires to be a championship team? Mm-hmm. That is not that has come nowhere near happening in 8 years. And you could say, well, yeah, but I mean, like, the franchise is a dumpster fire and this and that. Well,
sure.
Okay, he's had some decent sidekicks, and they've come nowhere near like a Western Conference Finals or a championship run. So to me, once you're 27 years old, you would have had some level of playoff success by this point if you were that guy. So it should be obvious. I would think it would be a relief to him to slide into that Kevin Love role, that Andrew Wiggins role, the Lamar Odom, Pau Gasol role from the Lakers like 12 years ago. Don't you think that would be a relief to him?
Not here. Not here. Somewhere else, yes. But here, he has determined and he has designated himself the alpha of this team. Now, the problem is he's not one. Like, that's the problem. But no, I think that it's been crystal clear. I mean, every chance Cat gets, he tells you, this is my team. This is my team. And so an Ant, I think, is not going to overpower Cat. I don't think Ant's going to sit Cat down and say, you know what, dude, sorry, ship has sailed. You're really, really good as a player, but you didn't get it done. You have certainly not had the playoff success by your age, to your point, Phil, that you would have expected. So I don't think here Karl Anthony Towns with this team is ever going to accept a role that basically removes him as the alpha. I don't.
Well, but if that's the case, if what you just said is true, and there's no room for wiggle room here, that he's going to try to put his thumb on anyone that tries to be the leader of this team, then you have to trade him in the summer, don't you? Like,
well, that's why you're going to give us a list of teams next week.
And I don't think that should be the first option.
I don't either.
He is a really good player.
Yes.
That just has these. He has these. I guess flaws, if you want to call it, these little fatal flaws in his personality and in the way that he does. He's not a great defensive player. He has the most fouls of basically any player. Like, there's things that prevent him from being the leader of a team, and I think I would almost say, I would rather try another coach to try and get the pecking order. I'm not firing Chris Finch right now. I'm saying if this can't happen organically, I'm not just going to trade him for 50 cents on the dollar. Like, if I'm going to trade him, it needs to be for a haul.
Yeah, I agree.
Future assets and players that could help fortify the Anthony Edwards experience here the next 5 or 10 years.
I don't think if it goes down to changing the coach, then something else is wrong here. I'm kind of with Judd that I don't think this guy, and this has been a problem with me with how I've identified and how I've watched Cat. I think he lacks so much self-awareness that he doesn't have the ability to told you're not going to be the leader here. He is going to be cemented in the fact, right or wrong, that I am the leader of this team. I know I am, and I'm not going to let anyone else tell me I'm not, and I'm not even going to bestow that to someone else on this team. I don't think he has the mental capacity for that conversation and for that realization. I wish he did. But I'm kind of with Judd. Until he goes to a new team, I don't think he's going to be able to accept that. I don't think it's possible.
Well, it's going to be really interesting because back to the beginning question, I think they've looked really interesting in 2 of the 3 games since he's been injured. And the one game in which they didn't, Gobert only played like 9 minutes or something because he got ejected. And they wound up with, like, Naz Reid was their only big man out there, and they were a sieve.
Yep.
So I just want to keep seeing what this looks like with Gobert doing Gobert things, Anthony Edwards doing Anthony Edwards things, and everyone else kind of finding their role slotted in and around those guys. And if they can continue to win, 2 out of every 3 games, and they climb up, and we're so early in this, I get it, but then how do you plop Cat back into it? And I think there's a chance it could all happen organically. And I hate that I don't want to like root for a guy to get injured, but it's almost like they almost needed to like reassemble this in parts. Okay, all right, we're gonna put Cat over here for now. Let's get the Gobert and the Anthony Edwards thing to work. Let's find a couple other combinations, and then Cat can plop in sort of after Ant and Gobert figure out how to play better with each other.
I do think that if this franchise is to ever get out of this hellhole of being, at their best, a first round and out playoff team, I do think if they're ever going to progress, that Ant has to be the star. So, like, I don't think he can be a different player. I don't think it can be Cat. That doesn't mean Cat can't be great. But, I mean, Ant has the dynamic at his age right now within 3 years to be really damn good. And this will be completely and probably should be his team. On Cat, I think the interesting thing, too, and we've all covered players and teams. Part of the thing about being a really successful athlete is suspending your belief to a degree where you believe things that aren't necessarily true. And Carl, and this is also because Carl's got people around him, which is not the greatest thing at times, telling him, this is your team, you're great, you're fantastic. And he's convinced himself that that's true. And I guess my point is, as long as he's here, Phil, I don't know that you can go back and undo that now. Like if you went to Golden State, that totally changes it. But with the Timberwolves, he's been told this is your team 1,000 times. And I'm willing to bet that there aren't a lot of people around that franchise that say, Carl, you got some problems here.
Well, it would be the best thing for his career if he let this happen organically.
But you're talking
just let Anthony Edwards be the guy that shields everything.
But you're talking common sense. You're talking taking a step back and assessing your own worth, not just as a player, but as a person in the locker room. We see athletes all the time, right? Who they start to decline, but they don't see that, or they can't accept that. Brett Favre, 2009 to 10, was a delusional guy who hit on a great year, but then he stuck around too long. And if it's just the professional athlete who is super successful is wired a certain way that can be really, really great for a long time. But when changes have to be made, I think they really struggle with that.
The real MVP of the Timberwolves this year is actually Tom Crean. In the 10 games since Tom Crean had a heart-to-heart with Anthony Edwards in Orlando, he's basically just collecting severance checks from Georgia, right?
Yeah, get him on the payroll.
In the 10 games since those guys sat down and had a heart-to-heart in Orlando, and Ant came out and dropped 30-some points in that game, and the Wolves won that game by like 20 points. Ant is averaging 26.5 points a game, 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3 steals a game, a block, and he's shooting 47% from the field.
Yeah.
I don't know what Tom Crean said, but basically it has launched Anthony Edwards into a new stratosphere the last 10 games or so. So I love it too. Even like the last 6 games, he's just, and there's been a couple team clunkers in there where, like the game against Washington, his 29 points were basically garbage time, and he's turning the ball over too much. But the last 6 games, he's averaging 27 points a game. So this thing is starting to move forward for Anthony Edwards. Tom Crean should be on every team flight going forward. Every pregame shoot around. I want to see Tom Crean.
Look at you getting all excited again. Look at you.
I want this to work really bad.
I know you do.
The Timberwolves have a chance to be so much fun and interesting, and Anthony Edwards has a chance to be this sort of top 5 transcendent player in the league. And they just keep taking steps back. But last night was a step forward. The Memphis game was a step forward. In between, you had the weird Oklahoma City game. They get Portland twice this weekend. They play a back-to-back. They're on a big road trip right now, right? So they play at Utah. That's right, the Rudy Gobert Utah game on Friday night, and then a back-to-back into Portland Saturday. Stay in Portland and then play at Portland on Monday. Clippers and Thunder.
Team bonding.
A reeling Bulls team, a reeling Mavericks team back-to-back. Like you can make some hay here.
Team bonding.
Before we get to old tweets exposed here, a shout out to our friends supplying Declan's wardrobe today.
Yeah.
That would be Underdog Fantasy.
Underdog Fantasy. Sending me a nice couple t-shirts here. I know I got the Score North hat on as well, but shout out to my friends at Underdog Fantasy for being the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. And in classic little brother versus big brother fashion, guess who had a big day on Underdog Fantasy and guess who didn't? I'll give you the one who didn't. It was me. But guess who did? Brother Liam with a 200 pick'em slip from the U.S. men's national team game. Look at this.
Oh, man. Way to go, Liam.
Matt Turner was excellent in goal during that game against the Netherlands. Excellent.
He wrote a 5-item over in that game on saves, on shots, on crosses. Yeah, there's crosses options even on Underdog Fantasy during the World Cup, okay? There's plenty of different sports that you can bet on. PGA is actually my favorite thing to get, so I'm excited for that to happen next year. But there's NBA, there's NHL, there's NFL. There's plenty of options at Underdog Fantasy, which is the best and easiest way to play fantasy sports. Join with promo code SCORE, S-K-O-R, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100. It's Underdog Fantasy. Go download the Underdog Fantasy app.
All right, every single week, Declan dives into the Twitter or video archives to find old tweets and takes and exposes them in front of, I was going to say the millions of Score North fans. We're not quite there yet, but at least a half dozen Score North Mackey and Judd fans.
Just tweets today. 3 tweets today. We brought up Kiyoshi Nishioka on the show yesterday, so I kind of wanted to look back. Did we say anything damning? Now, sometimes an old tweet's exposed too. I just like to shout out and look at what were we saying, maybe about each other, about situations with the Twins. So I'm going to pull up actually this one first from Judd, who was, I think, sitting next. And this was, by the way, PMac21 days on Twitter. So this isn't even at Phil Mackey. This is PMac21 days.
Somebody was squatting on at Phil Mackey for a long time. The old Macadac. Old Macadac made it happen.
I remember that.
So here's
you tried to get at Phil Mackey?
No, you tried. You told me like you kept trying and like it was a dormant account, right? PMac21?
Yeah, it was.
So
this is when Judd just started at 1500 ESPN here.
Yeah, so this is August 26, 2011. I just said to PMac21, quote, "That's not a bad at bat by Plouffe," end quote. And as he moved the runner to third, PMac so tired he just agreed and didn't even argue. You guys weren't even like working together yet, were you? I mean, Judd, were you at 1500 at this point?
I think I was with Mr. Fun. I think that was when
Judd and Funzy.
It's time for Judd and Fun.
No, it wasn't. You know,
we're talking sports right because we know it's fun.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks. That was right before I started the show. Because we started on the Monday after the opener in 2011 against the San Diego Chargers. So I had left the Tribune, and I think I was doing columns. I started doing columns for our website, and I must have been side by side.
You were doing the Saturday show with Pat.
That's
and
right.
Then,
and I started doing columns.
Some columns. And I think, so this is before Plouffe. Plouffe had a kind of a breakout season the next year.
Yeah.
Where he hit like 20 home runs in a 2.5 month stretch.
The big June, right?
This 2011 season was a train wreck, and I think I was just disgusted to be covering this team in late August, and so Judd is clearly just poking and prodding me at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Feel bad about it.
Okay.
I was mature at the time.
Let's go to PMac here, I believe. Let's see what the date was in this one. Yeah, a few months earlier, March 16th, 2011, in spring training, the Twins are busting out this A lineup versus Mets today. We got Denard Span leading off, got Kiyoshi Nishioka batting second, Mauer at DH, Morneau, Young, Kubel, Valencia, Holm. I don't remember who the spring training catcher was of Holm, and Alexi Casilla rounding things off. Dunsing starting, busting out that A lineup versus the Mets. And at one point, it was thought to be an A lineup, but this was also a lineup that was battled with injuries. Pitching didn't help either. But funny that this was the A lineup as we got towards the end of spring training 2011.
If I remember correctly, that was Steve Holm was one of the backup catchers for the Twins for a while there.
I don't remember Steve Holm.
He was on the active roster for a while that season, but Steve Holm is the guy.
Valencia, your buddy.
Danny V, Swaggy V.
This lineup, now keep in mind, this is March 16, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
People, including myself, were very optimistic about this Twins team.
Early in the morning, too. 7:26 a.m.
Well, that's what you got to do, man. Spring training, you got to get there early.
And it's 8:26 Eastern
That's
time.
true.
Because it's in Florida.
Yep.
That's right.
But yes, you don't. Early bird gets the worm in spring training. You got to get down there, hang around the batting cages, and get your scoops.
You got to talk ball.
Go in the clubhouse.
Hey, coach, what's going on?
And sometimes for those road games, the bus leaves at like 7:45 or 8 a.m. So if you want to talk to players before they go on a road trip, to Dunedin or something, you got to get there really early.
How many times did PMac had a couple too many the night before and had to go up nice and groggy at 7:30 a.m. to talk to a young Alexi Casilla or a young Trevor Plouffe?
As a 25-year-old in spring of 2011,
you're probably fine
every time. Is the correct answer.
But the great thing is you were 25, so recovery, not as big of an issue.
Not as bad.
We also it was so much fun. You came down there one of those years. Mm-hmm. This is back when 1500 ESPN launched in 2010, and we were the flagship Twin station. So and the Twins were a playoff team. So we had big radio numbers at the time. This is when AM radio was still fairly viable. Those first 3 or 4 years of 1500 ESPN, and so the budgets were a little bit bigger for what they would allow us to do and not do. by the end of the 1500 ESPN run, Judd and I were begging to stay in like a Super 8 for 2 days in the same room so we could go cover spring training. But at the beginning, the company would rent out. This is before Airbnb existed, but they would rent out a home for like 2 months.
A condo.
A condo or a townhouse or something.
Yep.
And so you'd have, at any given time, you'd have like me, Tom Pelissero, and Judd, or Fun, Royce, Judd, Mackey. At one point, I think we fired up, because this was the early Ricky Rubio, Kevin Love days too, so we fired up NBA League Pass and just had that going for the end of the basketball season. And yeah, we would partake in some beverages the night before, pretty much every night, and then go cover spring training the next day. Those were good times.
I bet.
Yeah, are you kidding?
I was living in Florida for like 2 months, watching Steve Holm, apparently.
So that was, if it was 2011, I was just starting like my first week of freshman year. So yeah, of college. So yeah, so that was a 19-year-old Declan. And you know, sometimes 19 and sometimes even 21-year-old Declan would put devoted Twins fans as followers. Got a question here. Am I way off here, or would this be a legit trade? Alex Cobb, who I think was pitching for the Rays at this point, for Hicks, Plouffe, Rosario, or Adam Walker. Just throwing out reckless trade ideas and throwing out the farm. Hicks, Plouffe, Rosario, Adam Walker. I think Alex Cobb flamed out pretty quickly after leaving Tampa Bay, too. I think he got paid by like Baltimore.
Yep.
Yes.
And I don't think was...
And wait for it, the Twins bid on him too, but didn't get him, coming up just short.
They actually did put a bid in on Alex Cobb. I do remember that, yes.
Alex Cobb was a decent reliever last year. He's still pitching.
He was a starter.
He was a starter. He was a starter.
But he was decent. He was
decent.
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
he's bounced back. Okay.
He's still in the league with the Giants.
I didn't know that.
So so this would have been 2011, his rookie season. He came up. He was a highly touted prospect at one point. And so you wanted a young team-controlled arm. Who would have won this trade? So you would have gotten Alex Cobb from like 2012, 13. What year was this?
So going in
14. Oh my
so
God.
going
his
into
arm blew
15,
up after.
and his arm exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you would have had, so if you would have made this trade at the time that you tweeted this, you would have traded Hicks, Plouffe, and Rosario for the 2015 season of Cobb, which would have been Tommy John recovery. The 2016 season of Cobb, which was also Tommy John recovery, 5 starts, 8.5 ERA. But then he would have come around in 2017 for you.
Perfect Twins trade, right?
Yeah, perfect.
We got a pitcher. He's hurt. Oh, that's okay.
Oh, the Twins forgot to
We
Google.
got control. We got team control.
If they sign Carlos Correa for 10 years, I'm assuming that he has some sort of torn ligament that we don't know about.
Doogie said that there is concern, not really from the Twins, but part of the concern about Correa is a back problem. He told us that on Tuesday.
Like a long-term back
like a
problem?
lower back problem. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I did not know
can
that.
we just, if he's going to make $300 million, can we just find him a chiropractor that knows what he's doing?
Oh, just
maybe a
just
massage
sign him.
therapist and a chiropractor.
Just roll the dice.
It was the trainer. Okay, they got a new trainer now. Everything's going to be just fine.
It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Again, there it is. We are not physically able to talk about the Twins for more than 30 seconds without ripping them. Declan pointed that out to me a couple times.
Yeah, it's hard.
I think every time we talk about the Twins, we're just crapping.
Yeah, that's okay.
I agree. I don't know what to do though.
They deserve it. Where does, for excitement to zero production, Adam Brett Walker, where does he fall? Because there were like 2 years, right? Or 3 years. It's like, the power he's going to bring and blah, blah, blah. And he was just a strikeout machine. The last time I saw him.
For the Milkmen, right?
He was with the Milwaukee Milkmen.
Yeah. He might be an indie ball somewhere. And yes, I think he was the last. That was the last before the Saints, I think, made the jump to AAA. So that was like one of the last years pre the AAA jump.
Yes. In fact,
yes,
we were there.
I was at that game. Yeah, Judd and I think we're there.
I think we were there doing a remote at the time from the press box, and we saw the Milkmen lineup. Adam Brett Walker prominently featured.
Yeah, amazing.
But anyway,
a
lot of excitement.
We should almost do, maybe this is a pecking order at some point. I don't know, or maybe not. The top 10 most hyped but failed Twins prospects of the last 15 or 20 years. I don't know that Adam Brett Walker makes that list, but it's a great list.
Or prospects in town, period, with the Wolves, Wild, Vikings, and Twins. Who are we excited about?
LaQuantosaurus Rex.
Yeah. Oh my God, they
still
got
in the
this
league.
guy.
Yeah. All right. Well, there you go. There's your Mackey and Judd here on a Reckless Speculation Thursday. You can find a new Flagrant Howls episode with Kyle and myself dropping on this Thursday. Judd's hockey show multiple days a week if you want your winter sports fix, and then obviously Purple Daily Vikings entertainment over on our other daily show. So we'll see you there for a state of the offense discussion on this Thursday.